Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shri Jyotiraditya Scindia, the Honorable Union Minister of Civil Aviation and Steel, Government of India. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Joining him on the stage, Mr. Adit Palisha, founder and CEO Zepto, Mr. Praveen Iyer, co-founder and chief commercial officer, Akas Iyer, Mr. Richard Held, OBE, non-executive director, TVS Supply Chain, Solutions Limited, Executive Chair, UK India Business Council, UKIBC. And Mr. Sanjiv Mehta, President FICCI, to kindly do the honors of welcoming Shri Jyotiraditya Scindia Ji, the Honorable Union Minister of Civil Aviation and Steel, with a green certificate. Mr. Sanjiv Mehta, to kindly welcome our honorable guest, the Honorable Minister with a green certificate. It is a ticket of 10 trees will be planted in the name of the Honorable Minister in Sundarbans National Park in the state of West Bengal. And before we proceed further, may I request the Honorable Minister and dignitaries to kindly come together for a group photograph. So may I request for a group photograph before we proceed further with all the dignitaries. Thank you, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, let's once again put our hands together to welcome the Honorable Minister in this session of Future Ready Supply Chains. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've just been informed the Honorable Minister has pressing commitments and has only 25 minutes to spare for this session. So I would kindly, humbly request all our eminent speakers to kindly take not more than 2 minutes to convey their addresses. And I would now invite Mr. Adit Palisha, founder and CEO, Zepto, for his address.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank the FICCI team for giving me the opportunity to speak here today in in the presence of the Honorable Minister and other incredibly dignified leaders in the business community. I think the purpose of today's conversation is obviously future-ready supply chains, and I come from a very different and new age supply chain business, which is quick commerce, right, where we deliver groceries incredibly quickly to customers across India. To me, what I wanted to take the 2 minutes of speaking time that I have to discuss was how we've built a supply chain that's scaled from zero to thousands of crores in sales in 1 year. And obviously there's a demand side to that as well, right? Why are customers using a platform like ours? Why, is it as sticky as it is? How has it sort of exploded across the country? Not just in our case, but in multiple people in the industry's case as well. But today, I think the focus is on the supply side, right? How have we put ourselves in a position where today we do hundreds of thousands of orders every single day, and that translates into tens of thousands of delivery partners and countless other folks in the supply chain that make that experience possible. I think for us, the long and short answer of how we've built a supply chain so quickly and done it in a way where it's resilient to handling higher and higher volume every month is because we've focused on people centricity within our supply chain, right? And more specifically, building people centricity through technology. And what I wanted to do this conversation is to give examples of how we've used software, technology, and in some cases hardware as well, to build more people-centric supply chains, which result in better scalability and resilience. In terms of the first example, right? I think many of you here have probably used food delivery platforms, or even some of you used our platform as well, right, where we're delivering groceries. When you look at the last mile logistics system for a platform like that, one of the biggest problem statements you have as a delivery partner is that if I'm delivering from a restaurant, right, on a food delivery app, I actually have no idea where I'm going to be directed throughout the day, right? I could start, let's say, towards the north of the city, near where I live, get an order from a restaurant nearby when I log in the morning. But I get thrown around different parts of the city. I might start from the north, get an order from a northern restaurant to an area in the west. I get put into that location. Very quickly, I now have an order coming from the western part of the city that I need to, get done in the southern part of the city. By the end of the day, I'm at, 1.5 hours away from what I started at 9:30 p.m. I've got to head back to, that point of origin. And I have to do that in the middle of traffic. I have to spend that fuel and waste that time, which is incredibly difficult. What we've done at Zepto, just as an example of using software for building a future-ready and people-centric supply chain, we've actually used detailed network design and geofenced locations so that delivery partners can actually spend all their time in one location, right, where they live, deliver work, all in the same area. That's one of multiple other examples. There are examples in software for farmers, packers, etc. But I think today we're a little bit tight on time, so I limited at that. But thank you all, and looking forward to the rest of the session.
Thank you very much indeed. And may I now invite Mr. Praveen Nair, co-founder and chief commercial officer, CASA Air, for his special address. May I remind you, sir, for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. We'll try and keep it short and sweet. So, airline industry has gone through a lot in the last 2 years, but the future looks pretty promising. There are essentially 3 areas that I would like to cover on the supply chain planning side. The fact remains that the industry pre-pandemic levels were at about 200 million passengers between domestic and international. This is likely to go up to about 400. The Honorable Minister did talk about this over 7 to 10 years, likely to go from 200 to 400 million, which essentially means the number of airplanes will go up from 700 odd today to about 14 to 1500 in the next 7 to 10 years. So 3 critical areas from a supply chain standpoint. One is obviously the airport and the infrastructure. I think there's a big tick. 2 critical cities, the NCR and Bombay, coming up with new airports. So I think the supply chain planning around airports and infrastructure availability is very strong, which can absorb all the capacity that's going to come in, which is going to allow slots parking for the carriers in a more structured fashion as we get this capacity into India. The second piece is skilled manpower, pilots, engineers. I think we have a temporary lull in the availability, but I don't think it's going to last long. We will see enough and more skilled manpower coming through, which can absorb the future growth that's coming through. The third element, and by far the most important element, is how airlines can run efficiently by reducing the cost as much as possible. Like we all know, bulk of our costs are beyond our control. But one critical element of the cost is the engineering and maintenance cost. And MROs that are being developed here have essentially categorized them into 3 or 4 parts. One is the airframe. The supply is very strong here in India. We have very strong players who provide the airframe related maintenance in India for the Indian carriers. The other important element is consumables and component, which is again available. But the real big cost element for airlines happens to be engines overhauling. And just to give you a perspective, 1,400 engines with 700 odd aircraft, they go through a check once in every 4 years, a massive check. Bulk of it is sent outside of India. And what we need to create as an ecosystem within India is to provide a pooling system with the help of the OEMs, and the airlines, the industry needs to get together and build that process moving forward. So that's the critical element which needs focus for us to be future ready. I think all the ingredients are in place. the only area which needs focus is this one area. On that note, I would like to say thank you very much for having me here and being a part of this distinguished set of speakers. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Iyer. And now, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Mr. Richard Heal, OBE, Executive Chair, UK IBC, and the Non-Executive Director, TVS Supply Chain Solutions Limited, for his special address. Over to you, sir.
Honourable Minister, fellow panellists, thank you. There is no difference between the UK and India in terms of the headwinds and tailwinds that we are suffering from and indeed benefiting from in the logistics sphere. These are driving opportunities which we all have to grasp. TVS SCS is a global company, part of the TVS group. We operate in over 100 operating locations around the world, employing 17,000 people. We have more than 20 million square feet of warehousing space, which we manage and operate. We have 140,000 20-foot equivalent units of intermodal freight containers, and we have over 55 of the active clients in the Fortune 500. I think one of the key things about surviving and developing and prospering in this market is technology. TVS SCS has developed a proprietary global integrated technology system, including data analytics as well as other intelligence, which has been developed in a uniquely highly modular fashion, which allows us to be responsive to clients in different sectors. And what I'd like to do is spend the rest of my time talking to you about some of the key examples. We are a major operator and supporter of a leading mining company where we provide mega maintenance and repair operations across their 7 state smelters and mines. This is integrated with the client's SAP via a set of APIs for 100% automated operation. We also supply and support an international automotive company, ensuring that their suppliers are tied into their networks such that parts reach their plant in time. Also a domestic automotive company where we manage their aftermarket in India. We also are very much involved in grocery merchandising, a retailer in India, not yourself, sir, where we manage 40% of their supply chain through a set of 5 distribution centers that supply more than 300 stores in southern India. And finally, I would say that we've moved into sustainable energy, where we are developing in-plant warehousing and external warehousing for a leading solar provider, and it'll be the largest solar plant in India once it reaches full scale. 4 words I want to leave with you: scalability, innovation, technology means responsiveness. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, now I have the proud privilege in inviting Honorable Union Minister of Civil Aviation and Steel, Shri Jyotiraditya Scindia ji, for his special address. And let's put our hands together to welcome him.
Sanjiv Mehta ji, our esteemed panelists this evening, and ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed an honor to be here at FICCI Leads once again, a forum where new ideas, new thoughts are exchanged on an annual basis. And I think from this melting pot, if you will, emerges new paradigms, new thinking. So indeed, it's a great pleasure to be here. And I think the topic that has been chosen by FICCI for this symposium and this conference, I think is apt in the current environment that we are going through on the global stage. The last 2 years have seen tremendous tectonic shifts taking place across the world. And one of the areas where these tectonic shifts have had their profound impact is in the displacement and the new placement of supply chains. What is very apparent to all of us in areas of business, in economy, across the world is the area of supply chains, even though not omnipresent, in many ways are the linchpin of success of economic growth paradigms across the world. Now, be that as it may, with regard to companies in every vertical, and we've heard some wonderful stories today, from civil aviation to automotives to logistics companies that actually make that possible, or it be that as it may with regard to countries and how they operate in the economic order, the global economic order. And I think India has moved tremendously along that paradigm as well. Very clearly realizing the importance of supply chains, the concept of a whole of government approach, pioneered by our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi ji, as opposed to government working in silos, ministries across the board, as opposed to only working in their verticals, transcending those verticals and actually working across a horizontal, i.e., how does government make that project or that imperative truly a reality in the days to come. So I think there are three key words connected with supply chains. The first is its robustness. Obviously, it has to be able to deliver on that particular timeline every single time. The second has to do with its resilience. And the third has to do with its reliability. So the triple R approach of robustness, resilience, and reliability signify the precepts of a successful supply chain paradigm. I believe that in India today, we are creating that ecosystem for supply chains. Manufacturing with COVID, moving its intensity and its direction towards India, also provides that opportunity. And I think that with the ecosystem being set up, there are changes taking place across the three most important fronts related to supply chain. The first is the policy front. And if you look at the policy front in India, there are some landmark changes that have taken place in the last 2 years. The whole concept of Prime Minister's Gati Shakti framework, wherein you have close to 16 line ministries working together to put infrastructure projects online. Multimodal projects. Many countries across the world provide efficiency across their logistics framework when transportation is not through a single mode of travel, but multiple modes of travel. First by sea, then by road, then by air, and the ability of a customer to be able to track his or her merchandise across that supply chain. So the PM Gati Shakti plan really brings that to bear in terms of a viability of that network. Then we have our robust capex pipeline. Almost 100 lakh crore capex pipeline over the next couple of years. The third is our PLI scheme, the productivity linked incentive scheme for many sunrise sectors, from drones to steel to pharmaceuticals to automotive products, to really power India as a manufacturing base for the world. And let me give you a quick example for that. In the area of steel, we put together a PLI for specialty steel products, almost a 6,322 crore project in terms of a PLI scheme. We closed that out just about 2 days ago. And we've had close to about 35 companies bid in for almost 79 projects, looking at a capacity augmentation of almost 28 million tons per annum, with an investment of 41,000 crores, creating close to 69,000 new jobs. Now that's the kind of fillip that one can look at through the PLI schemes. The fourth is the national logistics policy that was unveiled by the Prime Minister just 3 days ago, which puts a new impetus on the logistics front. So when we talk about the policy front, we also move to the operations front. And the concept of ease of doing business in India, to be able to cut through the red tapeism. And I believe that at least in the two ministries that I am in charge of, our role in government is no longer that of being a regulator, but our role in government is one of being a facilitator. Because I believe that when we work with industry, when we work with stakeholders, whether they are in the public sector or the private sector, when we ensure their success on a level playing field, in their success lies our success, and in their success lies India's success. And that, I believe, has to be the bottom line as far as government's approach is concerned. The final area is the diplomatic front. And here we are engaging with various countries across the globe, putting in place bilaterals and trilaterals to ensure that we give a fillip to our manufacturing sector, our services sector in India. McKinsey has put out a study that the logistics sector in India, which is close to about $200 billion today, should grow at a CAGR of close to about 10%, moving it from a $200 billion industry to almost a $320 billion industry by 2025. Now, that's the kind of growth that we look at in the logistics sector. Finally, I think that we as a country need to concentrate on four key fronts. The first is to be able to reduce the cost of logistics. Logistics today and supply chain is a key part of that, constitutes almost 13 to 14% of our GDP. We must reduce that to a single digit number. And I think the Prime Minister's prerogative and his sankalp on that front, whether it be through PM Gati Shakti, whether it be through the national infrastructure pipeline of almost $1.8 trillion, is to ensure that we reduce that logistics cost for all our manufacturers in India. The second is to enhance our export competitiveness. I firmly believe that India will become the manufacturing powerhouse for the world. And we will grow to a market beyond the $400 billion that we've set for ourselves, beyond the $5 trillion economy that we want to become. And that certainly is possible if we look at the third step, which is really to become a manufacturing powerhouse. We are today the world's fifth largest economy. And that day is not going to be far when we transcend both Germany and Japan to possibly becoming the third largest economy in the world by the year 2030. That very much is within our grasp. But if we put this paradigm in place, if we put this framework in place, that dream will soon become a reality. Finally, I'd like to say the fourth is to really bring about a paradigm shift in the way we look at reforms. And the Prime Minister, with his thought of one nation, one market, one nation, one ration card, one sun, one world, one grid, the International Solar Alliance, of which India is a very fundamental part of. All of these reforms whether at the global level, whether at a country level, or whether at a local level, will really transform India into the global superpower that she must become in our journey from our Amrit Kal to our Shatabdi Kal. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And may I now hand over to Mr. Sanjiv Mehta, President FICCI, to kindly carry on the conversation with all our eminent speakers here. Over to you, sir.
First, Richard, Adit, and Praveen, thank you so much. Yeah, robustness, resilience, reliability is, it's always such a pleasure to listen to our erudite minister. Let's give him a big round of applause, please. And just to set the context, I come from HUL, where we manufacture and sell 60 billion units through 9 million stores at a service efficiency of 95%. And that is the reason you can understand what a valuation is. It is often said that the competition is not between companies, but between supply chains. Yeah, General Colin Powell famously said that Desert Storm was won by logistics. And that's so true. Let me use this time to get some more insights from Honorable Minister. Mr. Minister, is many industries, like courier, for instance, were set up on the back of air cargo. They made a tremendous difference. FedEx and air cargo, very synonymous. If you were to look at India, multimodal, Krishi Udan 2.0, what is the role you envisage for aviation to play in India's supply chain and competitiveness? Oh, there's a speaker.
So, when we talk about supply chain and logistics, one paradigm that I forgot to mention is Prime Minister's insistence on looking at ODOP, one district, one product. We have over 600 districts in our country. And if we are looking at Michael Porter's theory of comparative and comparative advantage on a district-wise basis, right? And you're looking at a particular district specializing in that particular product, then it's key for that product to reach the market. Unless that product reaches the market, you're actually not going to see viability happening on a comparative basis, a quality basis. And in order for that product to reach not the local market, but the global market, supply chain and logistics are a very key part of that. And that's where civil aviation comes in. The example that Sanjiv gave of Krishi Udan, what is the objective of Krishi Udan? We are today the world's largest milk producer at over 110 million tons. We are the world's second largest fruit and vegetable producer. We are the world's third largest food grain producer. But we process hardly about 10 to 20% of that. And in the value chain, the processing part of the value chain is 80 to 90% of the business. So if we are producing food grain, foodstuff, fruits, vegetables, if you're not able to transport it to the consumer end of the market, that value proposition is lost. So let me give you an example of what's happening under Krishi Udan. We are taking Assamese lemon from Guwahati. And where is it going? It's not going to Calcutta. It's not going to Delhi. It's not going to Bombay. It's going to London. Okay. Grapefruit is reaching London. From Tripura, going to London and Germany, jackfruit. Your king chilies from Assam are going to London. Now, that's only possible because you are incentivizing through a viability gap funding model the route of logistical multimodal transport through air. And I believe that this has the fundamental probability and value proposition of really changing our rubric, not only across agriculture, but also across manufacturing. So a case in point for you is, since we started Krishi Udan, we were transporting close to about 80,000 metric tons of fruits and vegetables. Today, we are doing almost about 140,000 metric tons. And that's the kind of growth that you've seen in 1 year. Air cargo through COVID, we are transporting close to about 2.1, 2.2 million metric tons. Today, we are doing close to about 3.1. My target for the year 2030 through air cargo is almost about 10 million metric tons. And therefore, the revenue potential, air cargo was the silver lining in the civil aviation sector through COVID, which produced growth of almost close to 2,000 crores in terms of revenue for our civil aviation players. So there are tremendous possibilities in the area of logistics. We need to tap into them, connect the buyer and seller, make transportation efficient, make it cheap, and make it viable.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Is the last question. I know we had said 25 minutes. We're just about there. If I may?
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. Is there many countries in the world where their airline has done a tremendous job of building their country brand? Yeah, be it Emirates, that comes to the mind, or Singapore Airlines. You have rightfully divested Air India, but just give your perspective. How will our Indian airlines, you envision, could play a role in strengthening the brand India?
I think Sanjeev, I think they already have. If you look at a lot of our airlines today, even domestically, whether you talk about the full service carriers, mainly Air India and Vistara, or if you look at the ULCC, the ultra low cost carriers, whether you have Indigo or other airlines, most of them, in terms of the quality of the product, the value proposition, are beyond, I believe, honestly, beyond world class. But what we need to do in India is, when we look at every industry from a consulting and a strategic standpoint, goes through an S-shaped curve. You first have an industry in its infancy, which is going through lower growth rates. Then you come to an industry that's in its takeoff stage, which is the middle part of the S, which is a very high growth stage. And then the industry attains maturity and growth starts sloping off, which is the top end of the S curve. Civil aviation, I believe, in India is just starting off on the middle part of the growth stage. We have today close to about 144 million domestic flyers and almost about 60 million international flyers, which makes it a roughly about 200 million, which number, by the way, was only 104 million in 2013-14. So that market has almost doubled in the last 8 years, including COVID. Our number of airports prior to 2013-14 was 74 in 70 years. In the last 8 years, we have built between airports, waterdromes, and heliports an additional 67, which takes our number to 141. I believe our passenger numbers should go to 400 million in another 6-7 years from the current 200 million, and our airports, water aerodromes, and heliports should go to 220 from the current 141. That's the kind of growth. Now, when you have that kind of growth coming in, then our domestic players have to venture outwards. And I am requesting, cajoling, pushing our carriers to really get more wide-bodied aircraft so that we have point-to-point service directly from India. I do not want my passengers to have to go to a second country to ultimately get to their third destination country. which is what's happening in India today. And I think the more we have point-to-point service, we have quality with it already, there's nothing that can stop Brand India in the civil aviation sector as well.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. It's been a short session, but a very enriching session. We have in Mr. Minister a very eloquent speaker who in a short time has given us perspective about government reforms, and also as far as the subject matter is concerned, the 3 R's, technology should be used extensively to build supply chains, and we need to have people-centric supply chains. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much indeed. Once again, take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Minister for being here with us, for sparing your valuable time. Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Good luck. Sorry for your loss.
And ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform you all, now we await the arrival of Shri Piyush Goyal ji.